Stop it. Hey everyone. It is 4:01, so I'm going to give a few more people some time to jump on and join us before we get started. But just for some like housekeeping stuff, for this Zoom, throughout the webinar or the webinar, feel free to add your questions, concerns, feedback, anything like that inside of the chat. And if you have any questions, I will be reading that throughout the webinar and trying to answer those questions as we go. Okay. So I'm just going to give it a few more minutes. I'm also just getting set up on my side. So I have a question. Hello, what code editor do you prefer using? And this is from RT. For code editor, I like WebStorm. But that one, they have a 30-day free trial, but after that, you have to pay. The other really good one that a lot of people like is VS Studio. And that one is free and it has really cool plugins and it's really supportive. Another one that a lot of people use is Atom. And then the last one was Sublime. So those are like the top ones. They all basically do the same thing. Sometimes they have different shortcuts to get things done. But if you find one that you like that seems to work well with you, I would just use that. And also being flexible between tools is good as well. Because you might join a team that uses something that you may not be used to using. I don't know if that answered your question. And just a it does. Reading from the chat, it says it does. I like Visual Studio Code. What were the last two? The last two was Atom, which is a pretty cool text editor that I've used in the past. And then the other one was Sublime. Yes, this will be recorded. There will be parts, the question in the chat was, will this be recorded? The answer is yes, it will be. There will probably be parts that I'll edit out just because I want to do make it more interactive this time around. Okay. And I'm going to share the slides with everyone right now in the chat. I'm also going to follow up with this webinar after we're done for today, and send out a email that will go over a lot of resources that we covered. And the slides will be in that link as well. But for right now, I want to go ahead and share this with everyone. So let me grab this link and I'm dropping it into the chat right now. There you go. Okay. So it's 4:07, so we've given enough, given some people some time to jump on. It's not displaying. Okay, let me check the link. It looks like some people are saying that it's not displaying. Does it say that it's some permission issue, or do you just not see the link to the slides? Okay, I'm sorry. It looks like they're saying that CM is saying nothing is there, but I'm on mobile right now. I'm not sure how Zoom works in mobile, but when I share my screen, you'll be able to follow along with the slides, and then I'll follow up and make sure to attach the slides in the link. But if anyone else is having trouble with the slides, please let me know. All panelists. Okay, it looks like the link did not get sent out. So let me try it one more time. I'm going to copy the link. Okay, so this one might have gone out to everyone. If you can access the link, perfect, we got it. If anyone else has trouble, please let me know. Okay, good. It looks like more and more people are able to get the link, so this is perfect. Okay. Let me see. No sound. I believe everyone is all muted, but you should be able to unmute yourself. I believe in the chat you have the option to like raise your hand if you have a question, and it will give me a notification, and that'll let me know to like check the chat and maybe unmute as we go. So if anyone has questions, we'll handle it that way. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen so that we can get this all started. So if you can, I'm going to share my screen, and if you can just go post to the chat if you can see it. Let me see. I think I just lost my chat window for Zoom. Okay, got it. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with this. Move this around. Okay, there we go. So just a brief intro to get started for this webinar. A little bit about me. My name is Valerie. I am the founder and executive director for Tech by Choice, and we are a nonprofit on a mission to increase the diversity in STEM by making sure all underrepresented people know that they can interstate and have a really good time in tech. And for this session, it's one of our TBC online sessions, and this one is going to be focused on web development from a very introduction, very friendly go at it. But before we get started, I wanted to just cover some code of conduct stuff. We're going to be a little bit more interactive in this webinar if technology is on my side today. And I just want to remind everyone that we need to be mindful of how we're talking to people. And I want to let everyone know that we do not tolerate harassment of any kind. I know this is the internet, and there's been a lot of Zoom bombings, I believe that's what they're calling it, where people come in and troll. So we are very mindful of that, and we will try our best not to let that happen. But if you feel like something isn't right, either by something I said or did throughout this webinar, you can go ahead and use this link and report it anonymously, or you can reach out to me or anyone on leadership team through the hello@techbychoice.org email. Just do this in live classes, do introductions so we can get to know each other. We can do that in the chat, or we can have people unmute, and you can share whatever information you feel comfortable sharing. Some defaults that we use are name, pronouns, favorite colors, where you're at in your tech journey, and what you hope to get out of this boot camp. And I realize that's kind of a lot to talk about in a chat, so let me make sure I can unmute people if they want to answer any of these questions. Okay, I'm not getting any responses. I think this is just an awkward thing to do virtually, especially when we're not all sharing our, yes, you can post it inside of this chat. So we have some people who, CJ likes purple. Hey, Kelly. We have some purple, red, blues. So that's cool. Wanting to get some exposure today. Yeah, this would be a really great class to get started with that. Your color is black. We have 2 purples. Oh, we have a green. So we have someone who's, Mary has been teaching herself to code for the past 6 months. That's awesome. Hopefully today you can learn something new and code with a few other people. Hey, Victor. I'm gonna go ahead, like, please feel free to keep chatting in the chat room. But I'm gonna go ahead, well, I guess I could answer some of these questions. My name is Valerie. My pronouns are she, her. My favorite color is actually yellow, like the color I'm wearing. And I'm currently a senior dev, Brennan. To the front end. So just a heads up, message from the Slack, heads up from Kelly. I think a lot of you are chatting to just the panelists instead of both panelists and attendees. Yes, that is a setting that I don't know why it's set to do both. Allow chat, okay. Yeah, so I want to just make sure if you're chatting to make sure where the 2 is. If you click on it, you can change it to panelists and attendees. And so everyone can see your info. Thanks for calling that out. But yeah, for my tech journey, I'm a senior dev. I focus a lot on React and JavaScript and some like Node.js stuff. And I really like teaching and mentoring and helping, so I hope I am doing a good job at that during this webinar. So to get into today's agenda, we'll be covering what is web development, what are some tools that you can do to be a web developer. We'll cover for this part of it just HTML, do 2 activities, and then we'll cover some CSS, and we'll be able to do some fun stuff with CSS in the last 2 activities. Some of the activities we might, depending on how time goes, we might just make it as like homework or nice or something fun to work on outside of this, and kind of do like a study session after that to review it, and for anyone who needs help or would like some feedback. So to get started, we'll be talking about web development. A lot of people said like building a website is so cool and that it's a skill that you definitely need to have, but no one really covers what it means to be a web developer. You hear things thrown around like front end, back end, and no one really explains it all and what it all means. So front-end development, if you break it down, it's basically everything that you see on a website and you interact with. So these are things like buttons, animations, branding, and things like that. And the languages that we use to build out the front end include HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And so when you think of front end, you can break it down into saying that HTML is the structure that holds everything together and really formats the data on the page or the information on the page. And CSS, for those of us who like makeup, CSS is basically the beauty blender to HTML. It smooths it out, makes it look really good and nice and fun to play with. And then you have JavaScript. JavaScript is the thing that ties it all together and make it really come alive. As you can see in this GIF, JavaScript is one of the things that helps tie in the front end to the back end. So if you just have a page with some text that looks really pretty, that's amazing. But it becomes more interactive and exciting when you click on a button and it sends data to the backend, or it pulls data from the backend, and we're able to add that interaction and make it come alive with JavaScript. Like side or pro tip, and it's also called client side. That's something that I feel like it took me forever to learn when I was first figuring all this stuff out. But yeah, front end is also called client side. So we covered some with front end, and I would like to talk a little bit about back end right now. So back end is something that seems very abstract, and when I was first learning about this stuff, I didn't know what it was at all. And I kind of just thought, let me just work with the stuff that I see and I really understand. But as I got more exposure into tech and into coding, I realized backend just meant it was holding all of the logic and the rules that is put in place to store and keep your data safe. And when I mean data, I'm saying like if you upload a picture to Instagram, that's your data. So the image you upload, the text that the description, any hashtags or things like that, that's what the backend is going to be storing and saving. And the languages that you use for backend can be Python, PHP, Java, Ruby, Node, any of these different languages. They pretty much do the same thing, and they work with backend code. And backend code is also called server side. So I want to break it down how it works in the web and how we interact with it every day. So if we think about how we use the internet, we open up a browser like we see here, and we can go to a website maybe like twitter.com. So we type that in, and we type in a URL that we want to go to, like Twitter, and what happens is all of the HTML and CSS and JavaScript and backend code that is used to build Twitter is saved on these servers in a different location, most likely multiple locations around the world. And when we hit that URL or address, web address, we're saying, hey, we want to go visit that server that has all of the documentation and code and stuff for Twitter, because I want to interact with that. So we hit that server, and what we see back on our browser is that same code that somebody else put up there for us to view. And so that's what's happening when we start working with the web and understanding the different parts of it and how it all interacts back together. So before I jump in and start talking about the tools and the different toolkits that you can have, I'm going to check in with the chat to see if there's any questions or anything like that. And make sure I didn't miss anything. Great. Deadpool. So I think we were talking about the Deadpool GIF, breaking down the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Yeah, I really like that GIF. Give it a few more seconds for any questions. And it's okay if I don't see it right now. I'll be pausing like this throughout and checking to make sure I don't miss any questions. So let's talk about some of the toolkits that you can use or that web developers use. So tools, and what do they mean? We'll be covering text editors, and text editors are also called IDEs. I'll be talking about VS Code as well as brackets today. And we'll talk a little bit briefly about GitHub. The other really cool tool that you can use as a developer, a web developer, is your favorite browser, whether it be Chrome, Firefox, Opera. I don't recommend Internet Explorer. That's just a really difficult browser to build code with, but you should be testing against it. And the number one tool that everyone should be using is Google search. I feel like as a developer, I spend a lot of time just Googling what I'm trying to do when I'm stuck. So that having Google search as your main tool to fall back on will help you whenever you get stuck, when you get stuck. So I know we kind of talked about text editors at the beginning of this, before we got started with the slides. And I did throw out VS Code. That's a really great text editor. Please feel free to use whatever you have on your computer. I'm going to go ahead and use brackets for this series. I think VS Code is an amazing text editor, same as like WebStorm and Sublime and Atom. But I like recommending brackets to people who are just starting out, because brackets has a lot of really cool features that come right out of the box, and it's not overwhelming to anyone. I feel like VS Code has a lot of stuff going on, and if you're trying to just get a good understanding of HTML and CSS and code in general, I don't want you to have to use a text editor that seems complicated. As your skill set grows, you can change your tools and upgrade them as you see fit. So I don't have brackets on this machine, so I'm going to walk through the steps of downloading it. It looks like I might not have the best web connection right now, so it might take a while to download. So I might scrap this idea and use the text editor that I have on my machine. Usually it downloads in like a few seconds. So what I'm going to do now is just open up my text editor. Okay. So I'll actually be using VS Code. But for those of you who are downloading, okay, this was not an epic fail. Brackets did download in a decent amount of time. So for those of you who are working along with me and are downloading their IDE, if you're on a Mac, this is what the step-by-step install process will look like. Like that. I'm just copying the application over to the new program over to my application folder, just so that it's easier for me to work with and things like that. So one of the reasons why I really like using brackets was because when I first started, this was actually the first IDE I used. And it's really cool because it has what they call a server. So as you're working on your code, you can see all of your changes as it happens, and it's happening live, and you don't have to refresh the browser, if I remember correctly. So now that we have our IDE or our text editor, we can go ahead and talk about the next tool, which is Git and GitHub. This web series is actually based off of the Microsoft Frontend Bootcamp that I found it. They released it probably last year, around Christmas or 2 years ago. And what it does is this is the boot camp that all brand new Microsoft employees walk through in order to be able to work on live code. So they put together this boot camp and they shared it with the world. They made it open source. And so as we're going through this, a lot of the exercises that we'll be doing will be here. So I wanted to share that with you. And actually the software to access this is in GitHub. And just a brief breakdown of GitHub. GitHub is one way that you can save all of your code and make sure that it's versioned. So say you have a project and you've been working on it for weeks to months and you're almost done, but you realize this button that was once working is no longer working and you don't really know what change broke that. And so when you push or use services like GitHub, what you do is every time you make a change or get the website to a state that you like, you save a snapshot of it and you save it to GitHub. And GitHub will say, okay, so when you made this change, maybe like 3 weeks ago, this is what the change was. This was the difference. So GitHub is just versioning for your code. Yes, I can share the link for the bootcamp here. So yeah, so that's what GitHub is. And if you go on GitHub, you can find a lot of different projects that people put out there for the public. And some really cool stuff is there that you can learn from. We'll be going over more in depth how to use GitHub as a dev in a later series. So in order to get started with our project, we have to really think about folder structure. But before I get into that part, I want to go ahead and check in with the chat to see if everyone was able to either open their text editors or download brackets. So if you've been able to download or open your IDE, just send a emoji to the chat. So someone put like that emoji that's like sweating and like nervous. Don't worry, this is going to be a really fun workshop and we're in this together. No sweat. We got a couple of hearts, a smiley faces. People are feeling the love and they're excited. I'm excited too. I recently found out that what is it? No, it's AFW stands for away from keyboard. That took me a long time to figure out. Okay, seems like everyone is got their text editors open. So what we want to start talking about now is folder structure. So once you have an idea for a website that you want to build, it can be really overwhelming to know like how do you organize this and how do you make things make sense, especially when you learn that to even build just the front end stuff, you have to have HTML and CSS and JavaScript and images and all those different things. But typically, if there are a lot of different methodologies that you can go through when talking about folder structure, but the one I like to at least start out with is you have a folder that is the name of your project, and inside of that project you will have your HTML file, you can have your CSS file, your JavaScript, and an image folder. Now, when it's really basic like this, and say we only have these 3 files, it makes sense to keep it like this. But then things start to get a little crazy or wild when you have CSS, like multiple CSS files, or maybe you decide to make multiple JavaScript files. So when that starts to happen, I would create a styles folder, and inside of the styles folder, I put all of my CSS. And then if I have multiple JavaScript files, I'll do the same, just name it either JavaScript or JS or scripts, and put all of my JavaScript inside of that folder, and the same thing with images. So there are a lot of different ways you can break that down, but it depends on the project and the team you're working on to make that decision. So now we can start talking about code and what it all means and things like that. We'll go ahead and start with HTML, which stands for Hypertext Markup Language. We'll cover what it is and how it works. So again, like I said before, HTML is the outline and structure of your web page. Just think of it as a Word document where if you didn't have any of those fancy fonts or colors, all you have is an outline of text and information that you want to share with people. So HTML works with the browser by putting everything in these tags. And the tags are broken down like line 1. It goes the tag name, the content that you want inside of the tag, and then the closing tag. So an example of that, because tag name is not actually an element in HTML, this is just an example. And to see a real element, HTML element, you would take a look at line 2. So what we have is the open p tag, which stands for paragraph, the content that you want the computer to see, and then you have the closing p tag. So again, the HTML tags, both the open and closing, it tells the browser like, hey, I'm gonna have some content inside of these tags, and I want you to use this use this information or style it as a paragraph. Or I want you to let the user know or render this page like a button. There's button tags. Or if it's a link, you would use the special tag to show a link. So let's break down these tags a little bit more. So for every tag, more or less in HTML, you will have an opening tag and a closing tag. So the breakdown of these tags is the left angle bracket, the actual character or like words used to describe that tag, and then the closing right angle bracket. And that's building out your opening tag. And then you have a closing tag. Every opening tag will need to have a closing tag to tell the browser that you're done building that type of content. And the only real difference between the opening and closing is this /. That is just telling the browser like, hey, this is the end. So I know I've been talking about the p tag a lot, and I just want to put it out there that that is not the only tag that you can use in HTML. I'm going to share this link with the chat. And this is just a website that you can use, W3 Schools. It has some good basic information. Sometimes it's a little outdated, but it's still a good resource when you need to check something quickly. And this website shows you all the different types of tags you can have. Now, when it comes to HTML, this seems really overwhelming to think that you would have to know what each one of these tags are. But the really good thing is you don't need to know what all of these are. You'll probably know as you get more practice and you work with HTML, you'll probably start to to memorize like a handful of tags, like anywhere from 10 to 20 tags. And when you want to build something and you're not sure if there's a tag, it's very easy to just go ahead and search for these things to see what's available for you to use. One more thing I wanted to highlight. So you might be questioning, why do we have so many different tags? And what makes them different, and how do you know when to use what? So one thing about HTML is that it should tell a story. Everything that you add to your files should help tell that story and make it really clear, even though it's just on the internet and people will not see these tags. When you structure your HTML to tell a story or to be semantic, what you're doing is you're making it really easy for people with disabilities to use your website. So people who are blind will use your website using a screen reader. And one of the ways that the screen reader knows how to read out this information is with the tags that you use. So I'm going to break it down a little bit more about tags and how they're different by talking about the A tag and some of the attributes related to that. So as we saw before in the past slide here, we talked about tags having just that tag name or that tag character. But actually, there are a lot of other things that you can add on to these tags to help tell a different story. And some of those things are called attributes. So for the A tag, and I'm just for reference and to show how one could like debug or research some things. If I go back to the W3 school website, and if I wanted to figure out more about an A tag, I see that it tells me that A tags are hyperlinks. So they're what you use to take a user from one part of your website to another part of the web. So because this tag does something different with links, it has some special attributes. And one of the attributes that it has that I don't think any other, well, very few other tags have this attribute is the href. And the href tag basically just says like, hey, what website or where do you want to send people? You would just throw it here. Another attribute I would like to point out is the class attribute. This is one way that you can pair or group together different elements on the page. So if we look at a website, we can see that this website has like links that look a certain way, buttons that look a certain way. But if you get down to this part of the website, you can definitely tell that these elements here, these boxes, that it has a header, some body text, and an icon. We can see that these three elements pretty much look the same. And so you would group them, or at least I would, as saying that they're cards. So if I was writing out this HTML for these three elements, I would give each parent element, like if you think about a box around this, I would call that box a card. And inside of that card, you have a header, which I would give it a class name of card header. Then you have an icon, which would be, I would give it a class of card icon. And then you have the body, which would get the class card body. And by grouping them this way, when we start making the website pretty and using CSS, instead of trying to target each one of these cards individually, you would just have to say, hey, grab all of the card headers and make it this style, grab all of the card body and icon and so on and so forth. And you can style all of them by just working with one group of code versus multiple. Now, I feel like I was talking a bit there. I just wanted to check in with everyone and see if they have any questions so far, or if I'm good to keep going. If you could like throw something into the chat if you're good, let me know, like thumbs up or smiley faces or hearts or something like that. Getting some smiley faces, okay, so I know I'm good to go. And again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and I will get to it. So we're talking a lot about HTML and the tags, but let's get into how all of these tags work together. One of the things that I want to point out before we get into this discussion is that when you think about HTML, I want you to think about it like a family tree. So you have parents have children, and it's very nested type of structure, as you can see kind of from this image here. So, oops. So HTML is broken down into these basic parts. You start off with the doc type. So the doc type is the first item that's loaded in a page, and that's what the browser is looking at to understand how it should render the page. When this first loads, the browser sees that the doc or document type is HTML. So everything that follows underneath it will, the browser will read it as if it's HTML. The next tag that we see in the image is the green one, which is the HTML tag. And so this is like the parent tag to everything that the page will render. So HTML is going to hold all of the content for our website. And then you have the head tag, which is a child of the HTML tag. And the head tag kind of holds all of the extra information that the browser needs to kind of render the page and just give it more detail and more structure. So, and what I mean by detail and structure is when you have, I don't know if anyone has noticed this, but if you post something to like Twitter or Facebook or even in text messages now, sometimes you'll get an image from the website. You can get some like short text that gives you some description about all of the website that you posted. And all of that information is all added to the head of the HTML page. That's how SEO works. You put keywords there, you like how we have these titles for the tabs, all of that information gets pushed up there, as well as the styles and JavaScript that you want to link to this page. And then the other tag that we have is the body. So the body is going to be everything that the web page actually renders. So think of things like links, text, whether it's H1s like header text or paragraphs. We have images, buttons, and much, much more. So everything that we saw in the HTML tags here, most of that will go inside of your body tags. Okay, so we've covered a lot of information, but I think we know enough to start coding. So our first activity is going to be our Hello World activity. And the goal of this is just to practice building out semantic web pages. Well, HTML pages. So we're going to have to create an HTML file that has some of the proper structure that we covered so far. We really want to focus on making sure that our website has a paragraph tag, have some headings, whether they're like 1 through 6, some formatting text tags using like strong or bold and emphasis or italics. We want to throw in a link in there, an image, make a list, and a button, just so we get used to how this all works together. So with this activity, I'm going to work through this one with you. And so you can go ahead and follow along with me. And if you run into any problems, I believe I don't know if everyone's allowed to talk. But if you have any questions or anything, at this point, I will unmute people. And so we can work through this activity together. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new project inside of my brackets. And to do that, let's see. Actually, instead of doing it in brackets, I'm going to make it super simple. And I'm going to do it inside of just a regular folder. So if I go to, I'll just go to, I have a folder that I put all of my websites in. And so inside of there, I'm just going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it Hello World. And just another pro tip to throw out there, a lot of people like to create a folder on their computer that's called site, like sites or like sandbox, or to like, they use sandbox to like say like a playground. I personally call it UFO because I didn't know why people were calling it sandbox, and that's my way of saying like, I don't know what's going on. I figured it out and just kept calling my site folder UFO. But that's one really easy way to stay organized. And let's see. And so now I have my project folder. So if I go back to brackets, I will be able to open a folder. And if I go here, go to Hello World and open this. And so right now, nothing's there, it's empty. So I need, if I right click, I'll get the option to do a new file. And the first file I'm gonna make is an HTML file, because that's all we've learned so far. And the standard for creating your first HTML file is to call it index. So I'm gonna do index.html. So by adding that .html, you let your computer know that that's a HTML file. The dot is the extension ending, and that's just how the computer understands what's going on. So let's see. If we follow information that we just reviewed, we know the first line of code that you need to add is the doc type HTML line. And so I'm going to go ahead and add that exclamation point. And again, that's just telling the browser like, hey, this is HTML. I guess I don't need to go through each slide because it's in this image. So then I'm going to do the HTML, the head, and the body. Okay. And as I start working with this, you'll see that the text editor will help me by completing some of the work for me. That's why it's really cool to use text editors to write code, because it gives you just some extra support. Actually, I did the body before I did the head. So let me fix this. So the head and the body. So now I have my like skeleton structure there. And if you see inside of the HTML, I tabbed in, so I have that space. And that just helps you see that the head and the body is a child to HTML. So this is a practice that developers use to keep their code looking clean and neat. And it also helps you find mistakes faster when it's set up this way. So tabbing is important. So now that we have the structure of our HTML page done, we can go ahead and start writing out some semantic HTML. So we want to add headers, a paragraph, formatting text. We want to format some text, add some links, images, lists, and a button. So if I'm thinking about how I want to tell my story of a web page, the first thing I want to do is give it a name. Have like a headline. So I know that there's these header texts, H1 to H6, and that helps you kind of create titles and things of pages, and it changes the font sizing. So H1 being the biggest and H6 being the smallest. So since I want this to be the title, I will go like this. There. So there we go, I have my title. And the really cool thing with brackets, I could do a live preview mode. And as I need to take this off of full screen. As I am working on my code, I can see all of the updates happen here. So like if I do test, so like as I type, it updates. Okay. So let's see. So we have the heading. I am going to put some random information for a p tag. Again, a p tag is just a paragraph. And so there we go. I know I said I wanted to add a button. That says button. And let me zoom in so it's easier to see here. So now we have hello world, some text, a button. We can add a link here. Okay. And and we can say we want to go to, let's say Google, or no, let's do it looks like someone has to step out. Yes, this will be recorded and I will upload it to YouTube right after I get done editing it. Okay, sounds good. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. So yeah, so now we have a link. So we've got a paragraph, a link, a header. We need to format some text. So formatting text means do you want to make it italicized or bold? And a way to do this is with HTML, you can have nested elements. So inside of this p tag, if I wanted to make a random bold, I can wrap random inside of a b tag, which actually I think, I forget which one is the most updated wrong, but use a b tag or a strong tag, and that will change the style of that font just for that one word. Now I can wrap this around one word, or I can wrap it around everything else here. And then it will make the rest of that sentence bold. So it's just whatever is inside of that opening and closing tag. Okay. So with very little work, it looks like we're knocking out a lot of these things. We have a link, we need an image, and a list. So a list, let's start with the list. A list is interesting. So if we do HTML list tag, and we go check out W3 schools to get a quick breakdown of what that is. And we see that we have two options. We have unordered and an ordered list. And we see that it's broken down with these tags here. It has a parent tag that will be UL for unordered list. And each item will have an LI tag, which is a list tag. So I can, if I wanted to do an ordered list, let's see where they talk about it. So ordered list would be OL. So I've been able to Google my way through completing this assignment already, and it wasn't that bad. So if I do OL, do LI for list element, let's say 1, 2, 3. And so now we have a list on the page. Let's go see what the other element is. Oh, an image. So let's Google how to do the HTML images. So again, if I'm looking for HTML image, like how do you do that? Placing the language you're trying to debug with around the question you're asking. Will really help you find the information you're looking for. So with this one, I'm going to go ahead and post the link for the HTML images to the channel. But I want to go back and give people some time to take another look at the ordered list and make sure everyone is caught up to where we are. And once everyone gets done making their page look like this, if you could just send an emoji or a thumbs up, a smiley face, or something like that to the chat, that would be amazing. We're getting some thumbs up over there. Looking good. Okay. So as people are starting to throw their reaction into the chat, I'm going to go ahead and I know I'm going to add an image, but I need to like if I look at the HTML page and I read a little bit about how images work, I see that the image tag here has some attributes. And we kind of talked about attributes, but these are attributes I haven't seen before, right? So when something is new, the really cool thing about this website is that it does a pretty good job at breaking some of this stuff down. So it says that the SRC is the URL, so web address of an image, and the ALT or alt attribute, it says, so the attribute, the alt attribute is a way for you to replace the image with text for people who use screen readers and can't see the actual image. Well, thank you for joining. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I'll send out an email once everything is uploaded to YouTube. So yeah, so that this is how it's broken down. So you have the address or URL of the image, as well as some additional text to describe the image you're using. So I'm going to go with some puppy images because I have a puppy running around here, and so that's been on my mind a lot. And when I see an image, I can an image that I like, I can right click it, and I can do copy link address. And Google changes how the link address works. So I like to just test it out in the browser to make sure I got the image I'm looking for. See, I didn't click the right thing. So right click and copy image address, there we go. So now I just have that image. And you can do this with the image I'm sending to the chat, or you can do this with any image that you find on the internet that you want to use. So again, to preview the structure, I'm going to just replace the SRC with our new puppy image. And so again, we want this website to tell a story. And I, like usually with like blogs and stuff, you see images above the actual text. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that pattern into this project and do this. So what I'm doing here is I'm building out that image tag, right? Let me add some spaces around here so it's easier to see what's going on. So I did the image, I have the SRC, and I need to add that alt tag so that everyone can understand what this image is. I'm going to put a cute puppy sitting down. So I think that's what the puppy was doing. And I want to point this out about the image tag is that it's self-closing. So where we have an opening and closing tag for the P tag, for the image, you just have the opening, a slash, and a closing for images. And so if we look here, we have everything that we're looking for. So we have text, the photo, the list, the button, and the link. And so we've technically built our first web page, at least our first one in this class together. And so we were able to complete this first activity, and we're just now coming up on an hour. I wanted to move a bit slower for this series because it's new information for some people, and we're still trying to find the best balance for these online webinars, and it's a little bit harder to do when you can't gauge the room. So I try to make this a little bit more interactive, and I hope it works. But I want to go ahead and take a pause right now to open it up for questions. I will definitely break this down because we didn't get to touch or talk about CSS, but I think we have a good understanding of what web development is and how to write semantic HTML, which I think is a good stopping point. Yes, I can show my code again. And I know it's a little hard to read this link because it's super long. But let me see if I could make this all easier to read by adding more spaces. I hope this helps. And another thing that I didn't cover, and I don't think it's in any of the slides, is comments. So like as you're writing your code, sometimes things get complicated and you have to explain something, or you need to take notes, or you want to break things down. One of the really cool things about text editors and our HTML files and most coding files is you can add comments to your code. So for HTML, the comments look like this, with the bracket, exclamation point, 2 dashes. Anything you write inside of here will be in a comment, and you close out the comment with the 2 dashes in the right angle bracket, or just angle. And you don't see, it doesn't show up on the web page, but you do have it here. So you can write notes to yourself as you're coding things out, which is very useful for you when you come back to it after a while, and to other devs that you work with. So just checking in with the chat. I want to see how everyone feels about the code on the screen. Are we all caught up there? It's looking good. Awesome. So looking at this page makes me realize that I think I might have skipped over an example, and it's a really good example to highlight how CSS can help us. So I'm going to go ahead, and I know we're over an hour, so if anyone needs to jump, just let me know. You don't have to let me know. You can just go ahead and jump off if you need to. But I want to show this really cool, where did it go? I think it's like a website that breaks down HTML in a different way. No, not that one. Okay, it was this one. And I'm slacking out this link to the chat. I thought this was just another really good illustration of what we completed and what we'll complete next. I feel like we're on this page. We have the HTML, and it has all the pieces there, and some of the basic structure is there, but it's just not as pretty as it could be. And then once we add in the CSS, like this little character really comes to life. And you see, you can do some animation, make it look more like a circle, look like a face. But when I click on it and I interact with it, nothing happens. But when you have the JavaScript, you can interact with it and it follows you. If you click on it, you have these buttons that do these different cool things. And it really does come alive. And for the project that we just got finished building, we'll be able to make this become more interactive and come to life. But I think this is a good stopping point. So if everyone's okay with the code and everything like that, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and just open it up to Q&A. I will share my code publicly. I'll add it to, I'll add the link to the code in our GitHub, so you'll get it in a follow-up email, and it will be in the comment box in the YouTube video. We'll go over CSS in another webinar, so I'll make a part 2. I think when I was practicing this content, I went a lot faster, and I went really slow when recording it this time. And I know I scheduled this out for only an hour. And so I think it'll give people time to play around a little bit more with HTML, and then I'll schedule part 2 for probably next week, and we'll do CSS. So I've stopped sharing. You're welcome. I'm glad that people enjoyed this. Trying to see if there's a way that I can unmute everyone all at once, or Zoom recently changed like the UI, and I don't know how to use it anymore. Okay, so the speed seemed good. Okay, perfect. Then I was at the perfect speed. On top. So unmute all top at the right. Okay, let me see. Oh, unmute all. Okay, so everyone should be unmuted. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions about any of the content that we covered, or about web development, or anything like that, about type by choice, we can go for like another 5 to 10 minutes and talk about whatever anyone is interested in. And feel free if you don't want to unmute, or you're having trouble unmuting, or oops, wait, sorry. I don't know what I just did. Oh, I think I have to mark people as allowed to talk, and that is how you do this. Oh, okay. Sorry. I think we got switched over to, the Zoom updated its UI, and then we switched over to a upgraded Zoom, so everything is different. I got, so the first question I'm seeing is from CM, and they asked, how did I get my start in tech? I started out in tech because I was working at a startup when I was in college that was in the automotive industry, but they were building software. And I actually got hired to be a data entry person, but I was like employee number 3 or 4. So I got to work in the same room as the devs. And I saw the way that the devs were treated. They got Starbucks every Friday. they were the only people making salary outside of the founders. And their job didn't seem hard because they were breaking a lot of stuff. And it just seemed doable. And so I realized in order to get my next promotion, I should learn how to do what they're doing. And so I really kind of just like forced my way in. I took some classes online. I did some community classes, like through Meetup and things like that, until I felt comfortable enough with my skill set. And then I found the gap in the company I was at. They didn't have anyone who was front end. They didn't have anyone who knew UX. And so I told them I would just do those things, and that I think I got the devs to let me change some button text, and it was like I had to do it through Git. And so I told my boss, like, hey, you can see this commit. It's in my name. I'm a developer. Change my title, change my pay. They changed my title. They didn't pay me anymore, much more than what I was already getting paid. So, but that's how I got my first start. The next question I'm seeing in the chat is, will this also include responsive web design, like Flexbox, CSS grids? I'm familiar with HTML, CSS, but I don't know all of what I mentioned. Yes, we would definitely cover responsive. I myself know more Flexbox than I do CSS grids. I need to learn more CSS grids because. And so I would love to do a deep dive into both of those, but we will be covering responsive design. Another question that I got is, how long did it take you to learn front-end development? For me, I think my first commit in GitHub, like I made a GitHub account in like 2015. So I want to say like that was like my official starting point. I had been practicing probably like a few months prior to that. And by the time I hit my 7th, 8th month mark of self-teaching, I got an internship at the college I was working at. And so I think that's when I really started. So like 7, 8 months, so about a year. I felt like I was good enough to get a job, or someone else that I was good enough to get a job. I don't know if I actually was. At that time, I think I barely knew JavaScript. I knew HTML, CSS, and Sass really well. Didn't really know JavaScript, but I leaned really heavy on like UX. So yeah. I took a course in responsive web design, Flexbox, CSS Grid, but I did not understand as much. Yeah, the Flexbox and CSS Grid, that one's kind of just, it's abstract. And even though you can see it happening and in the browser, like as you're making those changes, those concepts are still hard to like just click. And at least for me, when I use Flexbox, every time I use Flexbox, I just Google how to use it. It's something that I kind of know, but I still don't fully understand. And I feel like that's how a lot of stuff in code is for me, whether it's front end or back end. Like I will know things at a high level. I know some stuff like very well, like I've done deep dives into things, but that's kind of how it is with coding. So that's why I said the best tool you can have is Google search. Thanks, Valerie. Is using GitHub and getting projects uploaded straightforward? Yes and no. GitHub and Git itself it's confusing for all devs. It doesn't matter how advanced your skill set is. But I can if people have more questions around GitHub, I can do like a breakout session, and we can set that all up. Because I think GitHub would make even the projects we're working on in this class easier to work with. And I can also send links in the follow-up email about how to get set up with GitHub. So there's a way that you can build like a little HTML page like we build, and you can make it go live for free. So I think GitHub is really, really great to use for that. What are some of the best practices using buttons versus hrefs versus pictures with hrefs versus text with href? So there's I don't want to say that there's a lot of different ways you can handle it, because when you think about building websites for all people, making it accessible to as many people as possible, there are ways to do that, and there's rules. How you want to bend and break those rules, it's up to you. From the research that I've done, you want to use a button when you want an action to happen, and you want to use a href when you want to take someone somewhere. I guess there are still use cases. There's always going to be use cases where you can use a button, like an image for a button. But the way you should do it is, let me share my screen so I can explain this a little bit better. If you wanted to use a button, an image for a button, what you would want to do is actually wrap the button and put all of the attributes you wanted to put with it. One of the attributes that I didn't cover, and I'll get into that in our next session. All buttons should have the type. It could be either submit, like you're submitting a form, or it's just a button. You can do that, and instead of placing text here, if you really wanted to make a button an image, what you would have to do to make it accessible would do this, and that would be the best way to start. Now, I would want to do more research on like how does the browser know that this is a button, making sure you can tap through this, and with your keyboard, and there's a lot of other things that come into play, but this is how you would set it up for a image for a button. But yeah, by default, you should just be using a regular button with some text. Okay, let me go open the chat back up. Yeah, GitHub is confusing. So yeah, we can definitely do a session about GitHub. It could be like a break off of this bootcamp. So yeah, we love that. How did you, another question I got is, how did you get the predictive text to populate in the editor? So for brackets, it just has some stuff. Like as soon as you do an open bracket, you can see all of the available tabs you can use. So that's just a part of brackets itself. For VS Code, there's plugins you can add that has snippets and stuff like that. That helps. And that's how you get the predictive text to pop up. Yes. Yeah, so I don't know, text editors are kind of like weird. Like sometimes their settings get off. And my allergies are bothering me. So like now my eye is watering, which is fun because like the camera's on. but whatever. The settings can get off with your brackets. And I forget how to fix that. I think it's like this little logo looking piece that's a plugin, and you can add different themes and things like that. But you can add in some, I think they're called like snippets. So yeah, like CSS hints, snippets, and things like that, and it'll help you with autocomplete. No worries. But yeah, so I guess like follow up for me would be to get that GitHub session started. And I think like when we start talking about the in-depth CSS, Emmanuel, who is our director of programs for TVC, he's amazing at CSS. So I think I would definitely have him do that CSS part. I feel like I've been writing JavaScript, a lot of JavaScript lately, so my CSS is really rusty. But still an exciting class. So does anyone have any more questions? Looking forward to the replay. Me too. I'm probably gonna have to do a bit of editing because I think I trailed off a bit or started to ramble. Awesome. Yeah, so if no one has any more questions, we can go ahead and close out for tonight or the evening, depending on where you are. I'm going to go ahead and send out the email with all of the resources and notes to everyone, as well as how links to the Slack channel and how to become a TBC member so you can stay up to date with all of our webinar series, job postings, and all of the good stuff of being a TBC member has to offer. What's our Slack channel? The Slack, our Slack is techbychoice.slack.com, I believe is the URL. But I will follow up and send out that link in the email so you can join that way. But yeah, I'm excited that everyone joined. I'm going to also be sending out a survey. So if you have any feedback on improvements, things you would like to see, or anything like that, just go ahead and let me know in that anonymous survey. And we'll make improvements based off of what everyone says. So yeah, thank you for spending time with me. I really enjoyed this. I hope you did too.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone.
Bye.